You are walking through a land with no road signs, no maps in your pocket, no compass in your hand, and no idea how many kilometers still separate you from where you need to be. Forests swallow the paths. Hills hide the horizon. Rivers force you to detour for hours, sometimes days, and yet you are not lost. Because in the distance, rising above the trees, you see a tower. And on top of that tower, a cross. And suddenly, you know exactly where to go. Today, we trust GPS. We trust satellites orbiting the Earth, digital maps constantly updating our location, and calm robotic voices telling us when to turn left. But for most of history, people had none of this. Travel was uncertain, dangerous, and confusing. Most people never went far from home precisely because orientation was so difficult. But medieval Europeans had something that we rarely think of as a navigational tool. They had churches. Across Europe, from the smallest villages to the largest cities, church towers dominated the landscape. They were intentionally built high, visible from great distances, often on hills or elevated ground. And at the very top, always the same symbol: the cross. This was not only a religious statement. It was a visual system, a landmark network, a medieval navigation grid. When travelers, pilgrims, merchants, soldiers, or even entire groups like the Crusaders moved across territories, they were not navigating through an empty land. They were navigating from tower to tower, from cross to cross, from one visible church to the next. You did not need to know where north was. You needed to find the next tower on the horizon. In open fields, church towers could be seen from several kilometers away. In hilly regions, they served as reference points between valleys. In forests, travelers aimed for the last known church before entering, and the next one after exiting. These buildings were placed in such a way that they unintentionally formed a chain of visibility across regions. It was as if the entire continent had been marked with vertical pins. And everyone knew what they meant. Even illiterate peasants understood this system perfectly. They might not read a map, but they knew, if I can see the cross, I am near safety. I am near people. I am near food. I am near guidance. The cross was not only a symbol of faith, it was a promise of orientation. Pilgrimage routes across Europe depended heavily on this. Paths to Santiago de Compostela, Rome, Canterbury, and Jerusalem were not marked by signs. They were marked by memory and visibility. Travelers learned to move from church to church, asking for directions at each stop, confirming the next visible landmark before continuing. The question was never, which direction is the city? The question was, where is the next church? This is why so many medieval towns grew around churches. The church was often the first major stone structure in the area. It was visible, durable, and stable. Roads formed around it. Markets formed near it. Houses were built within sight of it. The tower became the center of spatial orientation for entire communities. And this was not accidental. Church architecture favored height for spiritual symbolism, yes, reaching toward heaven. But that same height had a very practical side effect. It made the building visible across long distances. The higher the tower, the easier it was to locate from far away. Faith shaped architecture. Architecture shaped navigation. In times of fog, rain, or approaching night, the silhouette of a tower could be the difference between finding shelter or sleeping exposed in the wilderness. In dangerous territories, seeing a church meant reaching a place where travelers were expected. where hospitality was part of Christian duty. A tower on the horizon meant survival. For armies and large groups, this was even more critical. Moving thousands of people without modern orientation tools would be chaos. But when leaders could say, "We marched towards that tower," everyone understood the direction instantly. No debate, no confusion. The tower was the arrow. The cross was the marker. Over time, this created something remarkable. People began to read the landscape through churches. They recognized regions not by natural features, but by the position of towers. Memory of travel became memory of landmarks. After the church on the hill, we cross the river. After the church near the forest, we turn east. The landscape became a mental map of sacred architecture. Even sailors approaching coastal towns relied on church towers as visual references from the sea. Before lighthouses were common, tall church structures near ports helped guide ships toward safe harbors. The church was not trying to build a navigation system, but that is exactly what it became. When you step back and look at medieval Europe from above, you begin to see something astonishing. Thousands of towers scattered across the land, forming a network of visible points that allowed people to move with confidence through environments that would otherwise be disorienting. A continent marked not with signs, but with symbols. And because every tower carried a cross, orientation and faith became inseparable in daily life. Finding your way physically was tied to a symbol that also guided you spiritually. The act of navigating the land became, in a subtle way, an act connected to the presence of the church. You were never truly alone in the landscape. The cross was always watching over the horizon. This helps explain how pilgrims crossed thousands of kilometers, how merchants maintained trade routes, how messengers carried information between kingdoms, and how even uneducated villagers could travel farther than we imagine without ever feeling completely lost. They were inside a visual system that had been built over centuries. Today, we see church towers as historical decoration, architectural beauty, or religious heritage. But in the medieval mind, they were something far more practical. They were orientation devices. They were medieval GPS. And once you understand this, a new question emerges. If church towers helped people navigate the land, what other invisible systems did the church create that helped people navigate life itself without ever realizing it? Because the more you look at medieval Europe, the more you realize that the church was not only shaping belief, it was shaping movement, time, communication, survival, and daily existence in ways we are only now beginning to rediscover.